brother! Ben, you know how much we love to discuss Horcruxes on this channel, and yet, even though one goes almost completely unexplained in the books, we have yet to discuss it. But today ends that streak. Today, we uncover the origins of Voldemort's pet snake, Nagini. Despite Nagini being Voldemort's actual greatest supporter, very little is known about where she came from. We don't even know if he came to own her before or after the first time he tried to kill Harry. We do know that after he failed to kill Harry, his spectral form could possess animals, although it would often kill them quickly unless they were snakes, which seemed to be the only things he could inhibit for long periods of time. And we first meet Nagini in the Riddle House in the Goblet of Fire after he has left the Albanian forest, so you could assume that that's where they first met, but nothing is set in stone. But finally, we might be getting some answers. Pottermore recently released a new cast photo for Fantastic Beasts 2, and there is definitely a lot to consider. What? Is Leta Lestrange engaged to Newt's older brother Theseus? What? Credence is still alive? What? Grindelwald has one magical looking blue eye? Could that be Mad Eye's eye? What? By the way, Harry Potter film franchise, don't think we didn't notice that you obviously can change people's eye colors, because I still haven't forgiven you for Harry's very not green and Voldemort's very not red eyes. How hard would it be to go frame by frame from your main character and change his eye color? That's all I'm saying.
I think that's because Daniel Radcliffe's eyes didn't respond well to green eye contacts.
You know what? That doesn't explain Voldemort though. But by far, the biggest question mark of this photo is this unnamed woman played by Claudia Kim, who also happens to be carrying with her a new kind of curse. This unnamed woman is known as a Maledictis, which marks the first appearance of that phrase in the Harry Potter franchise. A Maledictis is the carrier of a blood curse, which ultimately destines her to transform into a beast. And I think this differs from an animagus, which can change at will, and a werewolf, which only changes at the full moon, in that this person will change at some point and not be able to change back. But it's like they're asking us to make a video about this, right? Why keep her name a secret? Does it reveal what kind of beast she'll be? Does that beast play a role in the Harry Potter books? Well, I think based on the title of this video, you can probably see where we're going with this, but could this nameless woman possibly eventually become Voldemort's pet snake, Nagini? And yes, I know that's sort of a stretch, what are we going off of? Well, let me tell you, certainly not nothing. The big clue is this circus ticket for the Circus Arcanus, which will be appearing in the second Fantastic Beasts movie. The circus seems to house many crazy attractions that might attract Newt and company, like the two-headed giraffe, or the two-headed lion, or the two-headed girl. There's also a hypnotist and a homo amphibia, and most interesting of them all, the enchanting snake girl, who gets the most amount of ad space of any attraction on the ticket. Snakes are always worth taking note of in Harry Potter because they're just so constantly related to the villains. But what makes us think that this girl is in fact the enchanting snake girl? Well, for one, her clothes definitely have a scaliness about them, much like a snake, but the real hint is who she's sitting next to. Credence. She certainly looks to care for him and be sympathetic to his suffering. And of all places, I can certainly see Credence finding a home at the circus, which is so often the home of misfits and outcasts. But don't worry, we have much more than sitting next to Credence in somewhat snake-like attire. First, let's break down the etymology of the word maledictus. Mal means wrongful or ill, and dictus in Latin means to speak. So, ill speak, wrong speak, maybe evil speak? Maybe this means that if you suffer this affliction, people speak ill of you. Or maybe it's a reference to another kind of evil speaking in the Harry Potter world, I don't know, parcel mouth? Not to mention that the fear of speaking something's name is a very common theme in Harry Potter. Voldemort is the obvious example. Voldemort, 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 ha, take that. But the Acromantula in the Forbidden Forest are also afraid to even name the basilisk in the castle, and even Horcruxes themselves seem to be difficult to research or talk about because of how dark they are considered to be. And Nagini becomes a Horcrux, so Maledictus could literally reference fear of a name and Parselmouth at the same time. And then there's the etymology of Nagini herself. Naga is snake in Sanskrit, and Nagin is female snake in Hindi. And a Nagini was literally a half-woman, half-snake mythical creature in Indian mythology. I mean, there you go. Nagini literally means half woman, half snake. And speaking of which, there is literally a point in the Harry Potter books where Nagini takes the form of a woman as Bathilda Bagshot in the Deathly Hallows. How this is accomplished by Voldemort is never really explained other than unimaginable dark magic. In my mind, I always just sort of assumed that Nagini worked herself into the skin of Bathilda, but I think there's definitely more to it than that. What if Voldemort was just able to find a way to semi-restore her to a human form because she used to be a human? I mean, who knows? Maybe that's not Bathilda's skin at all. Maybe that is actually Nagini's former human form, and, you know, Harry doesn't know what Bathilda looks like. And speaking of returning to human forms, at the beginning of Goblet of Fire, Voldemort has managed to ascend his spectral form to the point where he is a small, disgusting, terrible, physical being who can at least hold a wand. And do you know how he gets to that form? By drinking a potion concocted of unicorn blood and Nagini's venom. Like, why on earth does this work? When Nagini attacks Mr. Weasley, we discover that her venom is cursed and they can't heal the wound. I mean, they eventually do, but it's very deadly. How could one of the functions of her venom be to restore a body? Unless perhaps Nagini used to have a body herself. Because let's talk about that cursed venom. That is kind of a red flag right there. It means that the snake is magical of its own accord. Its venom, a biological part of it, much like the blood of somebody else, is cursed. It's not like Voldemort just enchanted her to make her venom dangerous. He couldn't have. He used the potion to restore himself to a body before he could use a wand again. The fact that he adds his own bit of soul and makes her that much more terrible is just, you know, that much more terrible. And let's also back up to a second to that attack on Mr. Weasley, because after that attack, something else happens back in Dumbledore's office that has never made a ton of sense to me. Throughout the books, Harry is constantly noticing the whirring silver instruments on Dumbledore's desk, and I was always very curious about what these do, but the only time we ever get to see them in action is after the attack on Mr. Weasley. Here's the passage. A serpent's head grew out of the end of it, opening its mouth wide. Harry wondered whether the instrument was confirming his story. He looked eagerly at Dumbledore for a sign that he was right, but Dumbledore did not look up. Naturally, murmured Dumbledore, apparently to himself, still observing the stream of smoke without the slightest sign of surprise. But, in essence, divided? Divided! The snake is, in essence, divided. Now, to be fair, this could refer to a couple of things. It could refer to the piece of Voldemort's soul inside of Nagini. It could refer to how Harry could be inside the snake, but only because he's inside of Voldemort, who is also inside of the snake. But it could also mean that Nagini herself is in essence divided, part woman, part snake. And finally, we know that Grindelwald was expelled from Durmstrang for performing twisted experiments. And the title of the movie is literally The Crimes of Grindelwald, with some fun Deathly Hallows imagery thrown in for good measure. What if these twisted experiments involved placing this blood curse on this girl, or any other number of the weird circus acts you see? The whole circus could just be the end result of Grindelwald's weird toying with magical people. Only time will tell, but one of the issues I had with this whole idea was Dumbledore is in the movie as well. And if he comes into contact with Claudia's character or understands her story at all, you'd think he'd have a better working memory of Nagini when it comes time for Harry to start destroying Horcruxes. Like, how could he forget all that? He should know a lot more about Nagini then, right? Well, maybe. Maybe this woman isn't Nagini herself, but just Nagini's mother? Stick with me. The only other case of anyone suffering from a blood curse is Astoria Malfoy in The Cursed Child. And while I don't always like to consider The Cursed Child canon, I think we can use it as a reference here to just determine how it might work. The important takeaway is that a blood curse can be passed down genetically. It can disappear for a couple of generations, but then resurface, like in the case of Astoria, Draco's wife, which is what eventually kills her. And again, Claudia is sitting next to Credence, and I have to say they look pretty coupley. And normal stakes only live 20 to 30 years, so if she is Nagini, then by the time she fights in the Battle of Hogwarts, she is old. Which might not be a problem because, you know, magic. But again, you'd think Dumbledore would know about her, right? But if she gives birth to a daughter, that daughter could also carry her blood curse and become Nagini unbeknownst to Dumbledore. But then that still leaves us with the question of what animal or beast would Claudia become? That's what we started out to answer, right? Well, I have a guess for that too. The 4 houses of Ilvermorny are Thunderbird, Puckwudgie, Wampus, and Horned Serpent. And it seems like no coincidence to me that Ilvermorny and its houses were introduced to us just before Fantastic Beasts came out, and then that one of the mascots was the big savior at the end, the Thunderbird. My guess is that each Fantastic Beasts movie will highlight one of the 4 house mascots, and that Claudia's character will serve that purpose for Fantastic Beasts 2 and become the Horned Serpent, also a snake and possible mother of Nagini. Ben, my question for you and everybody else is, what do you think? Will Claudia Kim's character become Nagini or be related to her in some way? Let me know in the towel section down below.
These socks are amazing!
Guys, thanks for watching. As always, please remember to like this video if you haven't already and subscribe so you don't miss any future Harry Potter action from us. If you want to see what we think Newt's Patronus will be, you can check out this video right here. And if you want to see how Harry Potter will appear in Fantastic Beasts, you can check out this video right here. But Ben, that's all I've got for you today, man. I will see you in another life, brother.